The Chunin exams presented many unique early adversities for the Naruto cast, both physically and mentally, whether it was the psychological impact with Neji and Hinata's family trauma, or the rigorous displays of power with things such as the Forest of Death, the written exams, and the one-on-one fights. Each of these challenges all seemingly are placed in an event to display to the elders how great of shinobi these Chunin could be, or Genin I guess could be. So today, I decided to place them all in a free-for-all. However, before I get into that, I need to first mention that I'm not alone today, and I actually have a very special guest with me today. My boy, the Sage of Thick Calves. Go ahead, say what's up, bro.
Yo, what's up, dude? So glad to be here. Thank you for having me on. We got a really good video for you guys today. So why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so make sure all y'all go sub to him right after this or right now. And we also have a video up on his channel where we rank the entire Akatsuki and power, and he also has a brand new video with Thunder God. So trust this man do be putting out all that good content. So go subscribe, go show him some love. Also go follow his TikTok and all that. And let's get right into the premise of this video. So yeah, we're just going to be going along the lines of like Hiruzen and the elders decided that the best way to display how the Genin would perform at placed in a no-holds-barred style free-for-all is to test how each character would use their abilities in character with their strategies that they may implement and their overall power. But obviously, we won't just be using some headcanon or whatnot, where we actually will be taking in their like in-character rivalries to see who would fight who, such as Neji and Lee, and Sasuke and Naruto, and Sasuke and Gaara, or maybe even some other fears, like how like Kiba is really scared of Neji and Gaara, so he probably wouldn't go after them and stuff. So yeah, you want to go ahead and talk about how we kick this off with a kind of a funny two little characters and how they might do in this.
Yeah. I think so. In character, we both agree that Shikamaru and Choji just run away. I mean, like they genuinely would not have fought in the preliminaries or for Shikamaru in the final round if not for like outside circumstances motivating them. Like for Shikamaru, he just didn't want to lose to a girl, and then for Choji, there was like a food deal. He was also like kind of mad. So like other than that, though, they both were like on the verge of just not participating at all. So I think if you put them in this circumstance where it's like, okay, compete to the death or like near to the death or just give up, I think that they would very clearly just give up. So yeah, to kick us off, they run away.
Yeah, yeah, they're just gonna see all these combatants and they're gonna be like, what? And Shikamaru, like he like as you mentioned, he was scared to like lose to a girl. So imagine losing to like four different girls and all these other strong people. And Choji like never even wanted to fight until like Awesome was like, free dinner on me, you know what I mean? So I don't think there's any stipulations that are gonna make them like want to join. So we kind of just have to like running the hell out of the arena or something, just running away. They're not even gonna combat them. But I really like how you worded that too. But for a more like serious matchup, we actually have Naruto versus Kiba. So right after them dipping, or about the same time, I should say, me and Sage both kind of agree that Kiba would go for Naruto off rip, and this is due to a few things. Like first and foremost, being that like in the preliminaries, Kiba was actually very excited to get Naruto as his opponent. He was like hoping to get him the most, as he believed that like Naruto was going to be like the easiest matchup to go against. Which in comparison to like when he was thinking about Neji or Gaara, he was like pleading to Hinata to just forfeit, if anything, even if she has to face him, just leave the match, demonstrating that Kiba is like very much afraid of those other combatants. So like Naruto for him in his mind is probably like the safest choice to just quickly eliminate. However, unfortunately for our dog-loving Kiba, Naruto has grown quite tremendously since the preliminaries and has shown like great feats such as catching Neji off guard and perceiving his moves. And Neji is no joke. And me and Sage definitely agree that Naruto more than likely shouldn't even get or need a QB amp, since like towards the end of the Naruto versus Kiba confrontation, Kiba went from like blitzing Naruto in base and forcing Naruto to try to like catch him off guard maybe, and Naruto was kind of like sweating. And then once Naruto was a little more like locked in series, he was like dodging the Fang over Fang, and even after like Kiba is said to like double his power, Naruto's still like capable of reacting to him, and he's able to like disguise himself as Kiba and like hide himself as Akamaru, I believe. So yeah, it's pretty good. And he's able to catch him and blitz him. So like a stronger Naruto from like a little later on, being like the finals, should like certainly be able to beat this Kiba. And you have anything else to touch on that?
Well, I think you put it really well. Like he does get stronger from
Mhm.
the preliminaries to the final round, and like very, very clearly. And then I think we talked about this before, but the cutoff that we're using is so like everybody gets all of their feats through the entirety of the Chunin exams, and
Yep.
then up to the end of the Konoha Crush arc. But like the cutoff is right before what we consider version 3 transformed Gaara.
Yeah. I'll
So
throw that
like
on the
up to that
screen.
point,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So up to that point, Naruto in base is like able to react to and like just Spartan kick Gaara, like still partially transformed in the face, and like do serious damage to him. So I just like this fight, unlike in the preliminaries, is not going to require him to, use Kiba's sense of smell against him, let's say. So I think, yeah, Naruto just kind of summons 100 or 200 clones and just beats the crap out of Kiba with very, very little difficulty.
Yeah, Kiba's he's not gonna get what he wanted out of this one. Now sometime like after this, we're not gonna get too deep into it, but we do both think that Sasuke versus Gaara is actually gonna start. We do think that that matchup's gonna kind of begin because it's implied quite a bit in the early amount that Gaara only really respects Sasuke as an opponent. He doesn't respect Lee
Yeah.
because Lee can't use ninjutsu. He's a complete failure. Naruto's a complete dunce failure who, and he doesn't really, they're not really aware of like the Nine Tails and all that stuff yet. He doesn't really care about Neji and obviously don't care about the rest like Kiba and those fodders and stuff. So Sasuke's the only one that he really cares about as Sasuke's like loneliness makes him like viewed to be like the strongest as Gaara. And the first data book like corroborates like why he's the strongest and stuff. So do you have anything else to say about the beginning of this match or
No, I think that it pretty much starts the same exact way that it started in the actual series. I mean, because like we said, the cutoff is right before V3 Gar, right? So Sasuke has trained to learn how to use the Chidori. He's trained up his speed. So I think that what we do see is a bit of that taijutsu versus the sand defense exchange, and that battle does take quite a while. So I think they're going to be sort of duking it out in much in the same way that they did in the final round of the tuning exams, while all of this other chaos is going on.
yeah. So I mean it's a cool matchup, but again, as Sage kind of hinted off, we're gonna go back into that a little later. But we're also both in agreement to what happens with Gaara's sibling, the oldest sister, Temari. So
Yeah.
Temari kind of just beats up the girls, like other than Hinata, because we'll get into that in a minute. But do you want to talk about like why Temari gets into it, like why she just beats them up?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so I think in character she's kind of got like a bit of an ego too, and
Hmm.
and like whenever she like off panel one shots Tamari in their round in the tuning exams, like it's so disrespectful, and I think like whenever all of this stuff, this chaos breaks out, I do think just because of the way that like narratively things are written, that a lot of the time, these especially like in anime, the girls will combat each other and stuff. So that's kind of the way that I see it happening here, and Tamari just mops up Sakura and Ino with like no difficulty at all. I think she might one shot them and then make some kind of snide remark and then go over to help Gara. And I think that would actually be to her detriment, because if you recall back in the Forest of Death portion of the tuning exams, he and Kankuro were like sort of being supportive of Gara, and he threatened to kill them if they got in his way. So
Yeah.
Virtue and I are sort of on the same page here. Like, we think she just mopped up the other girl characters, goes to help Gara, and then Gara just like killed her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's over for her pretty quickly, I think.
And even if you think that's like lackluster or whatever, or, like stupid, I mean, like, let's be honest. Like, there's like a good way to compare them, like her to the rest of the girls, and it's like by like the virtual Lee. So like Tamari reacts to base Lee, like his kick with her like fan, and like even the data books is like, is she more ferocious than Gaara due to like this kick because she's not scared of Lee's like crazy speed and whatnot. And then like base
Yeah.
Lee is a blitz level above Sakura and like the Force of Death, and Sakura Sakura can blitz Ino, and like so like there's already a precedent set that she's just gonna like Kame Itachi to fly and beat them up with her fan, like smack them upside the head. And I mean, like, do we really gotta talk about like what happened with Tintin? Like, she got off screen in one
Right.
panel, like all of her tools are on the ground, and Tamari's just standing there with her on the staff. She just kicks her away, and I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, she has like the Kame Itachi as I just mentioned, and like she can fly on her fan and stuff, and that's kind of like supported in the first data book. So none of the girls can really contest with Temari. And I really like how you worded that with how she's gonna go over to Gaara and try to help him, but it's not gonna go so well. He's gonna be like, "What are you doing in my fight?" And he's just gonna kill her and do what he did
Yeah.
to Lee and like break her arms and stuff. So yeah, we kind of have her getting
Yeah.
eliminated, and um, real quickly, do you want to go ahead and like touch on like what might happen with Shino and Kankuro, the other sibling?
Yeah, so both Shino and Kankuro are shown to be incredibly smart, but also like they're long range fighters, obviously. So I think that in character they would both sort of like step back and see how everything's playing out. And as things are playing out, they would notice one another. And I think it's most likely that these two would clash with one another as well. And I mean, I think Verse, you and I are both in agreement that it would basically go the same exact way that it
Yep.
did in the original storyline, where it's kind of a mutual KO sort of thing. Like Shino's going to get his chakra draining bug on Kankuro. Kankuro's going to, end up nicking him with the poison. So, like, they're both sort of just going to take each other out of the battle. And I mean, like, the only other alternative I could see is like maybe they work to like clean up, the sort of more fodder shinobi there. But like we touched on before, we think that two of them run away, three of them get cleaned out by Temari. So like there's not a lot to be said there. There's not a
Yeah.
lot to go around. So I do think that they end up fighting each other and sort of taking each other out. What do you think?
Yeah, I really like the way you worded that one as well. And I really think that like even if you want to give like we kind of both gave Shino the edge in this, but even if you do want to give it to Kankuro, maybe he uses like the puppet substitution more like how we did in the preliminaries. Then I mean like sure, like what if you give him the edge and then he's probably gonna go help Gaara as well, and I mean what just happened? So
Right.
it's not gonna work well
The
for
same
him.
thing that happens to Gar. He
Yeah.
Gara killed him.
Yeah,
Like,
it's gonna be bad, dude. It's gonna be bad. So, you know, I do think that one's, I do think that's kind of interesting. I actually did enjoy their fight, but now the reason why we don't really think he has anybody is because you might be thinking to yourself, well, Hinata, but so I mean, out of every Chunin exams matchup, this one's the most misunderstood that we think's gonna happen again, and this is of course being
yeah.
Neji versus Hinata. And me and Sage really do both think that Hinata will try and be like passive, but due to like the overwhelming tension between Hinata and Neji's more than likely just gonna take her as his first target due to how like the main branch practically killed his father, and there's so much tension between them. So we definitely see Neji like kind of taking her, in which in order to really see how this plays out, we should probably revisit like what actually happened in the manga. So we can see in like the very beginning at face value, it does appear that Hinata is able to like hang with Neji and box with him, which is true and says quite a bit about this girl's speed. But as we'll get into Neji's speed in like a minute, but for now we should just take into consideration like how much of a resolve amp it took her to get and achieve what she did. And Hinata went from like crying in fear of Neji to like doing this, like, somewhat combating him, and all because Naruto was just cheering her on. So like in this like death battle, me and Sage don't really believe that she's gonna get a similar amp. And even if she
Yeah.
even if she did, we still need to understand this like contextually. So we actually know that, like, at face value, yes, Hinata kept up with Neji, but Neji is still blatantly superior, like, shutting down her chakra points and tracking the Tenketsu perfectly, as he manages to actually shut down her chakra points, as his Byakugan is far above hers, far above Hinata's, like, in, like, almost, like, leagues, I'd say, which means that, like, Neji, in this case, since we were taking them bloodlusted, Neji should be more than likely able to kill Hinata, or at least put her on the verge of death, since we know that like pretty much she's able to combat him and show relativity and move her arms with like durability and negating techniques, and he's still able to like completely dodge them, not even take a hit other than like maybe like I think it was like a left shoulder hit or something, but the rest he's able
Yeah.
to just take his fingers and just boom 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 boom, he knocks all of her chakra points and just hits her heart. And I mean, I mean, I've been kind of talking for a bit. So, do you have anything to touch back on this before we get into what might happen in the middle or towards the end of this matchup?
Yeah, no, I think I do think it's pretty quick. Because we are taking these characters like at least semi bloodlusted. Like again, the premise is, it's last man standing, free for all, sort of like blood mist type stuff here. But so again, they already have that tension there, so we do agree that he's going to like just kind of go after her off rip. And again, like yeah, she has a pretty impressive showing there, but his goal was to break her down mentally. That's why he's like talking trash to her the whole time. So like he wasn't swapping hands with her and like having difficulty keeping up with her. He literally takes out every single one of her Tenketsu points and she doesn't even notice. And so like he's so far ahead of her in terms of just his combat speed, his reaction, his taijutsu skill. It's like he's so far ahead of her that he was able to shut down her chakra network without her noticing.
Yeah.
So, and then also here's another thing. Like whenever Kakashi is talking about how this works and like shutting down chakra points, like he talks about how you can just shut down the chakra flow to a specific area by hitting the point right. So if he wanted to, he could have hit any of those points and shut down the chakra flow to her arm or to like Virtue said, her heart or her brain. Like he could kill her very quickly if he wanted to. So I think even if they're both in bloodlust and like even if you give her a bit of a resolve amp, if he's fighting seriously, this fight's over very, very quickly. I don't see him taking the time to break her down mentally and show her how far ahead he is by like taking out all the Tenkatsu points. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it comes to an end pretty quickly, and then I think we both agree that somebody else sort of steps in after that happens.
Yeah, so following like the full Hinata fight, or sometime maybe in the middle, it doesn't really matter. As like after like Neji's like later performance, as again Neji was blitzing Hinata, so if he needed to kill her faster, then he could just do so. But it's actually Lee. We actually think that Lee's gonna jump in. So this is just due to like their rivalry and how bad it is, and how much Lee really just wants to fight Neji, as portrayed whenever he fought Gaara. He's constantly thinking about him. So where does Neji really stack up against Lee? And I mean, well, me and Sage both kind of think that Lee wouldn't even dare to contest Neji in base, or honestly, like within the first 3 gates, like low key, since it's heavily implied that Lee was like saving the 5th gate Lotus, which actually increases speed on top of the 5th gate. So he is, trying to use this on Neji, which should imply that Neji could at least contest this, or this would be slightly above Neji, in which Neji is actually confident in doing so, as like once the Lee fight concludes with Gaara, Neji basically said he's like, yeah, that's cool, you still wouldn't have made it past me anyway, even with such a fight victory. So yeah,
Crazy, it's a crazy statement.
no, it's actually it's insane. He's like, yeah, I mean that's cool, I guess. So Neji's on that level. He's on that level. So even if you were to say that, like Neji is like more 4th gate level, and maybe subscribe to the idea that 5th gate Lee is like the fastest getting, and that's why he's called he's said to have like unrivaled speed and stuff, and the guy stuff. And I wouldn't really take all the guy statements into consideration, because we know Guy's actually biased, like based on like the first data book kind of implies that like Lee's his favorite student by far and stuff like that. But I mean, even if again you want to take him as like slightly below Lee with like that interpretation, Neji still has like durability negation and far greater techniques and just better abilities overall, like the 64 palms, 8 trigrams, all that stuff. So which, for those who don't know, Lee in the gates would actually have his Tenketsu shut down rather easily due to the openings being presented by the gates. So Neji should really beat Lee as well, regardless of like a small speed disparity if you do subscribe to that or whatnot. However, sometime after this, Naruto probably has like whipped Kiba's ass and noticed like Hinata's dead on the floor, and Lee's like he's dead on the floor on the verge, which should leave Naruto to having like an even greater incentive to fight Neji than like him just like wanting to kind of get like Hinata's get back, I guess, and he kind of got chose by the big board or whatever. So he's gonna have a very good incentive. So do you want to go ahead and talk about this matchup, Sage?
Yeah, man. So I think you hit on that perfectly. Like, basically Neji's gonna mow down Hinata, and then there's gonna be a pretty tough battle between him and Lee.
Yep.
But I think he's gonna end up getting the edge. I do think that like his statement to Lee, and then sort of the fact that Lee didn't think he could contend with him outside of the fifth gate, like I think that like that leads me to believe that his rotation still might be able to counter it. And the AP from his attacks in fifth gate like didn't even allow Lee to really fully break through Gaara's sand armor. Like he had to juggle him around quite a bit in order to do anything.
Yeah.
And even then, like Gaara gets up and walks away at the end of the match. So like I I can't. You would have to argue that the AP from his punch. It's a tough one. I think he has to use rotation a few times, maybe gets chakra exhausted, and then he faces down
Yeah.
Naruto, who, like you said, is maybe resolve amped, maybe got a little bit of that QB chakra going, and this version of Naruto is stronger than the version of Naruto that fought him in the Chunin exams. So, like, I love Neji to death, and I do think he is the strongest Genin. Whenever we consider like their typical starter packs, like curse marks aside, transformations aside, summonings aside, all that stuff. Like I do think he's the
Yep.
strongest of all of the Genin, but at this point he's so exhausted, and Naruto just mopped up Kiba with literally like no effort at all. So he unironically might just like summon 1,000 shadow clones and just beat down Neji. And I hate to say that, but like realistically, that's sort of how it would go. What do you think?
No, yeah. So to kind of touch on like with the Lee point, like Lee's AP is not that good, but his speed is going to be very hard for Neji to contest. And what you actually notice is Neji's gonna have to really use like those high level techniques like the rotation, because if you go back and you look at the Lee versus Gaara fight, we can actually see that like Lee blitzes Gaara 8 times in one panel. I swear to God, 8 times in one panel. And the only problem with that is he's
Right.
moving down in like a very spherical motion down onto Gaara, kind of like in the center, like kicking him all over the place. But if you look at how like the rotation works, it's literally like a sphere, like a big ball. So it just kind of
Yep.
counters it, and that means he's gonna have to go into that for a while to beat, fifth gate Lee. He's gonna have to be able to contest him and hit the chakra points, like I mentioned. So I think you really touched that well, because I mean, I also agree. I have a video on Neji, and I do think he is the fastest and strongest Genin, but I think here it's very disingenuous to say he comes out with like no fatigue or whatever. I think that's certainly wrong. And I think like for him to fight Naruto, to kind of like follow what we were talking about, like this amp that he would get here would be like far greater than the one he got. Due to how much like greater backing, because he still has like Neji tormenting the Destiny and his Fate and all that stuff, but he also has the incentive that he just killed Lee, someone who considers to be his friend. He likes Hinata. He's not really
Yep.
so like aware like the love and stuff, but think about the amp that he would get here, and like this Naruto, he's not like some bum who's like Kiba level either, as we like talked about in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think you hinted at it as well. He's like able to like kick away Gaara. He's able to like pseudo react with his arms and stuff like that. So
Like in
again,
base.
yeah, again in base. So imagine this with an amp, and then he gets like pissed and he's like, all right, 2,000 shadow clones. He just whips that out. What's Neji gonna do? I mean, like again, I think he's the strongest, but I mean, like, this amp doesn't have any anti-feats, and it's not really shown again to compare it to, so you take that, make
Yeah.
it even stronger, and you add 1,000 shadow clones or something, and can Neji really, like, combat this? Like, you know,
Yeah,
I
well,
just,
and we already have evidence that like his best defense in the rotation
mhm.
wouldn't be able to counter a QB amp strike from a Naruto that like is definitely stronger than the one that he fought. So, like, I mean,
Yeah.
what's he gonna? At worst, he just counters it, and like the same thing happens, and they get blown back, and then Naruto still has like infinite stamina, and like can just like summon all of these shadow clones and still just
Yeah.
beat him down. But like, there's no scenario in which I see Neji actually winning here. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I know. He has to go against like the infinite stamina god after just wasting all of his own. Um, so,
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, so to kind of, I'm gonna lead you off onto a controversial point as I took the last one. Do you want to go ahead and
Uh-oh.
see and talk about like what was happening with Gaara and Sasuke during all this? Like what's happening with their match? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there are two things. So basically, whenever Naruto wraps up his fight, he's going to look over and he's going to see one of a couple of things because the Sasuke versus Gaara fight can go a couple different ways. So since we are giving them, at least a slight bloodlust, basically the way that I see this going down is it goes pretty much exactly the same way it went in the final round of the Chunin exams, except whenever Sasuke hits him with the Chidori when he's in like the spherical sand defense, one of two different things is going to happen. Either he's going to pull his arm out, and then Gaara is going to continue to be sort of incapacitated because he's like freaking out because it's the first time he's ever bled. And then like he was supposed to transform at that point in time to enact the Konoha Crush arc and stuff. Like he was supposed to
Yeah.
do that, but he couldn't because he was mentally incapacitated. So if we take that, then Sasuke being bloodlusted would probably just activate another Chidori and just kill him right there. At which point we would see a battle between Naruto and Sasuke, with Naruto probably having a little bit more stamina in him, but Sasuke still being able to access the curse mark if he needs to.
Yeah.
And then the other possibility is maybe because he has the bloodlust, Gaara, instead of being mentally incapacitated, actually goes into a transform state. Again, we're cutting it off before V3, but like
Yeah.
V1, V2 transform state. So he gets hit with one Chidori, then he goes into the transform state. Naruto looks over. At this point, I think Virtue and I both agreed that Naruto and Sasuke would sort of like team up to take him down. And then
Yeah.
you would end up with Naruto and Sasuke anyways, but Sasuke would have, a Chidori's worth more chakra in
Yeah.
his reserve potentially. So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Naruto and Sasuke. It just really depends on whether you think that they have to take down a partially transformed Gaara together or not. So you want to sort of like go over your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, so there's actually a few different interpretations to take for Naruto. Like the one that we were talking about with the amp and stuff that fights Neji, and it gets kind of ridiculous when you go into some higher scaling. But we know that like this Naruto, like he in his QB mode, which is the one we're talking about now, would actually be stronger than the one in the manga. He's able to like contend with
Yeah.
Neji, and since we were talking about like in those earlier rounds, Neji's certainly implied to be at least like a fourth gate Lee level. In my opinion, maybe fifth if you subscribe to the Lotus
Yeah.
being like what he needs to just kind of edge out Neji. So, either way, there's always been an argument going around that like the gates when they're discussed, they increase the power by dozens, right? They increase the chakra threshold by dozens. Dozens being plural, meaning 24 times the normal output, which would be weightless Lee. And some think that like weightless Lee is equal to Sasuke because Gaara kind of like sees like a silhouette and he's like, oh my god, it's the same speed as that kid. And then Guy, like without even talking to Sasuke or anything, he's like, it's about practically the same speed as weightless Lee, and so they
Yep.
kind of compare them, but there's kind of like a problem in the disparity, and it's almost like a little bit of downplay to Sasuke to kind of say that, and because Sasuke has the curse mark, which is kind of more unquantifiable than what people like to think. So
Yeah.
like some people like to bring up the Jirobo with CM2 being a 10 times amp, and CM1 would obviously be greater than or less than 10, so therefore you could put it like 9 or something, and that's obviously less than 24, so therefore Naruto and is like a blitz level above. But the problem with that is that's not taken into the account like the Sharingan amp, the Chidori amp. And I know you had a pretty good comparison when we were talking earlier about like how much the Chidori could actually stack up in terms of gates. Do you want to go ahead and touch on that real
Yeah.
quick?
Yeah, so like even if we want to be as generous as possible to Naruto and say, okay, so he was contending with, full speed Neji who should be like potentially relative to fifth gate Lee. Like if we want to be
Yeah.
as generous as possible, if you look at the only piece of evidence that we have, because we know that the Chidori amps your speed. It's been stated multiple times that it's like a high speed thrust, that it's so fast that you can't, react to things around you unless you have the Sharingan. So we know it amps your speed. But the only point of evidence we have as to how much it amps your speed is actually evidenced in the war arc whenever Kakashi in base is moving relative to base Guy. And then whenever Guy goes into the sixth gate, Kakashi is using the Raikiri, and they're relative in sixth gate and Raikiri. So, like, you could technically say, fairly, based on the evidence, that the Chidori could give you a sixth gate level amp in terms of speed. So if that's the case, then even with Naruto's massive speed amp putting him on fifth gate Lee level, it still wouldn't be enough to actually contend with Sasuke's Chidori. So if you want to be as like stingy as possible, you can get both their speeds significantly lower than that. But like I do think they scale right around that fifth gate Lee level, and then if you have, a sixth gate level amp, or even if it's just five gates, he has the Sharingan, which again, as Virtue alluded to, gives him the perception advantage. So even if they're equal in speed at their maximum speeds, there's just nothing that Naruto can do against that Chidori. So I personally lean in the direction. That's not even talking about the curse mark amp. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
Yes, it's
because
not.
if he's in base is equal, yeah, if he's in base equal to weightless Lee and then gets a six gate Lee level speed amp, then that should be more than what fifth gate Lee relative Naruto can do. But if you stack the unquantifiable, multiple times speed amp that he gets from the curse mark on top of that, I mean, Sasuke is potentially in a completely different tier using the Chidori in terms of speed. So, well, when stacked with the curse mark. So yeah, it's like no matter how you slice it, it's just that's the win condition that I see for Sasuke. I don't really see a way that Naruto can work around that. I do think it's a good battle, and like we get to see a bunch of taijutsu and Naruto use a bunch of clones, but like ultimately it comes down to, can Naruto counter the Chidori? And to me, the answer to that question is no.
Yeah. So I mean, I completely agree, and I love the way you worded that as well. I think that the Chidori, especially, like we're not even talking about like the AP. Like, what does Naruto have AP wise to contend with the Chidori, right? Because again, we're not taking. Right. He can't, go full Kurama, because again, we're like cutting off at V3, and that'd be very disingenuous to only have Gaara be able to go V3, and then we just have Naruto go full Nine Tails, or he could summon Gamabunta. That's very disingenuous. Like, I mean, like right. even if like Bunta comes in, like, what if he like spawns, he crushes everybody, and he's like, "Old man third, what are you doing here?" And he like runs away or something. Yeah, I don't know. Either way, like, the only thing Naruto could do, like, against the Chidori, like, AP-wise, this is even assuming he could react or whatever, is, like, maybe just, like, maybe get a Shadow Clone and be like, here, just take the attack for me or something. Which, I mean, again, Sasuke could probably see, because he could test all linear movements with the Sharingan. It does have the precog, so you're going to have to argue that, like, Naruto's, like, a complete, like, level above to where the precog's kind of, like, equaled out or relevant, or not so relevant, I guess I should say. So, I mean, we kind of...
And we also know that, like, even if Naruto does use a bunch of clones, like, the Chidori can be, like, held for an extensive period of time. Because, like, we see Kid Kakashi use the Chidori and wipe out 18 Shadow Clones. Like, so there's... Even if he does use clones as sort of a way to stave off getting hit by this thing, eventually he's going to get hit by it. So I totally agree with you. I was thinking about that, and I was like, yeah, Sasuke just mow down the clone and go straight for the real Naruto.
Yeah, he gets like 100 clones, and Sasuke just goes bing 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 bing. He just runs through them all with like the big speed disparity. So even if you're like me and Sage have kind of alluded to earlier, especially me, we really like alluded to Neji. Probably, at least I do. I really do allude to Neji being the best of the Genin, or the strongest of the Genin, and the fastest and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, still, like, that doesn't. I mean, him and Sasuke's already a close match, so what if you had him pushed all the way down here? What if you had, like, that controversial match, which I have a video on? But, I mean, like, you think he could really contest Sasuke after going through Naruto, 5th Gate Lee, that's a QB Naruto, 5th Gate Lee, Hinata, and then, you know what I mean? Like, no, it's not happening, so we kind of have, like, even, like, a good narrative, I low-key think, set as to why Sasuke wins. It's like, kind of like Blood Mist style, as you were alluding to, that like the lone Uchiha is gonna kind of just cut off all of his ties, and he's gonna kill his friends here, and it's kind of cool, honestly. But we do have Sasuke, taking the win on that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I just know that somebody is going to wrongly put in the comments that Naruto could use the Rasengan. He doesn't learn the Rasengan until after the Konoha Crush
Yes,
because
yes.
that's the search for Tsunade arc.
Yeah,
So he does not have the Rasengan here.
yeah.
So I know that somebody has already probably typed it in the comments.
Oh
Please go
gosh.
back and delete it.
Yeah, come on.
Don't embarrass yourself. I love you. So, yeah, so there's just nothing that he has, and ultimately, like, I think that whenever it comes to a battle of so many people in a free for all type thing, there are a million different outcomes that could happen. But Virtue and I wanted to make this the most realistic sort of most likely outcome,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
that we did. I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, whenever you have a character that has, with his most powerful attack, arguably the highest AP attack out of all of these characters,
Hmm.
and arguably with that high AP attack, the highest speed of all of these characters, with the Chidori and the curse mark
Sharingan.
amps stacked on top of each other, like, what can you do?
Yeah,
What can you do?
yep. And even like the Sharingan stacks on top of that with precogs. So, um,
Yep.
again, if you guys do have any contentions or whatever with what we've said so far, maybe you think that it would go a certain way, or we're just, some big idiots, maybe you should just comment that. But, please don't comment something stupid, like, as you mentioned, like the misremembering of Jiraiya's training. Like, he learns, like, how to summon Gamma Bunta and use the Nine-Tail Chakra, not the Rasengan. That's, like, later when he does, like, the
Yep.
balloon training. So, you know, but anyway, do you have any final thoughts before we conclude this, or?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody is watching right now and they have not subscribed to Virtue, make sure you go subscribe to him. He's
Hey,
constantly putting out fantastic content, some of the best power scaling that I've seen. I mean, honestly, I cannot wait to see the growth of his channel because,
yep.
it's the quality of the content does not match the level of subs. So I know it's going to explode. You guys might as well hop on this train ASAP because it's going to the top. So make sure you
Yes,
guys
sir.
you subscribe, hit that noti bell so that you can be informed when he drops new content, and join us on this ride. I'm super excited for
Yeah.
all the future videos, but I hope you guys enjoyed this one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You cut me off of my line. I can't say all that about you as well. No, yeah, same goes. We're going to the top together. Same thing all goes for him. Make sure y'all go check out our Akatsuki ranking over on his channel. His new video with Thunder God. Maybe watch some of his other videos. Watch some of my videos. Anyway, if you guys did make it this far, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you do, again, subscribe to both of us. And we also both have TikTok pages. So make sure you guys go and follow those and keep up with those. I post quite a bit of updates on there as well. Um, and yeah, anyway, appreciate you all for tuning in. I appreciate you, Sage, for hopping on this video with me, my man. And yeah, as always, love you
Yeah,
guys.
thanks for having me, dude.